perhaps learn from what they've learned in the United Kingdom. Does that help?
Two questions from CNA. The first one is, which are the priority areas where core rights are concerned under the legal framework? And the second one is, fundamentally same-sex marriage is still it is still not allowed in the Constitution. So are there plans to launch further challenges?
So dealing with those two separately. First, about core rights. You may remember when the Court of Final Appeal was hearing this case, they adjourned overnight to allow Government Counsel to consider what core rights are. And there was a good deal of difficulty answering that question. And in the next 3 weeks, I expect this is exactly what the Government Counsel and Appellants Counsel will consider. I'm not sure I can really give you a definitive answer. Our view is that really it does no good to divvy up these rights, and really all of the rights ought to be given, because we cannot, even those areas which might not be considered core rights, ultimately they may be the subject of litigation. There are some examples given in the court's judgment. I'm not going to repeat them. And we can see from the cases that have already come before the court that it's very hard to justify discriminatory treatment. Now, the other question you asked was about whether or not there are other cases that may come forward. There are already, as I said, at least 5 cases that I can think of that are already before the courts, and there are several more that are in contemplation that we are aware of. And there was an Equal Opportunities Commission report several years ago detailing all the ways in which same-sex couples are treated in a discriminatory fashion. So you can see that even if government launches a very tight scheme, very narrowly defining core rights, they may simply be delaying what is inevitable, which is a wider, more inclusive, positive scheme. Now, we don't want to say that there may not be circumstances or issues where there may need to be some nuance. But I think the point is, take a proactive approach, look at the benefit of the experience in other countries, and try to be inclusive rather than exclusive.
And may I just add to that? From a more social perspective, is that I think that although obviously legally speaking there are definitions about what is core rights and what are not core rights, but in my research and also research with same-sex couples over the life course, actually what same-sex couples face in life are actually not that different from opposite-sex couples, especially if you think about the life course of a person from different stages. Especially in the past, I've also worked a lot with older LGBT plus people. When it comes to matters of 生老病死, right, like from birth till the deathbed to the hospital, actually different sex couples and same-sex couples experience very similar issues, despite that with many more hurdles and challenges that they have to face. So I would argue very similarly like Asan, that the definition of rights should be inclusive rather than trying to draw on a very narrow list, which then would invite more debates in the future. 咁我好快地講少少，我覺得即係當究竟話應該同性伴侶應該要喺社會上面享有咩權利嘅時間，其實同性伴侶同異性伴侶講緊嘅其實都係一個人喺生老病死嘅階段，喺人生唔同嘅階段，尤其係以往我好多研究都有可能係接觸咗一啲年長嘅 LGBT 嘅人士嘅時間，其實面對嘅議題都係好相近嘅議題。咁所以當如果政府同立法會去討論呢一啲權利，將佢劃得太窄嗰陣咧，其實都只係喺未來嗰陣咧會有越嚟越多嘅挑戰係會出嚟嘅啫。
想問下 Travis 咧，即係就住今次嘅判決，有冇打算同伴侶可能喺海外有個結婚咧？即係同埋如果真係有呢個打算嘅話，翻到嚟香港，你哋最渴望得到咩嘅？喺香港嘅一啲伴侶嘅權利或者福利咧，咁同埋想問下，即係其實個判詞入邊有提到香港係冇一個憲法嘅權利去容讓同性婚姻啦，即係你哋覺得咁呢個可能同好多人本身嘅諗法有啲唔同嘅，咁佢都仍然係講緊即係異性婚姻同埋同性婚姻係有差異嘅，咁你哋覺得對嗰個性別平權有啲咩影響咧？唔該。
首先回翻第一個問題啦。其實 before 呢個判決之前嘅話，真係有諗過喺海外會結婚嘅。咁至於地方方面嘅話，其實就仲喺度考慮緊。 咁但係結婚呢個決定就已經係幾乎係可以話係100%會係做㗎啦。咁正如頭先第一次出嚟嘅時候同大家講過啦，咁其實今日個判決係都幾喜出望外啦，令到人哋，令到我哋啦嚇，尤其是呢個族群。咁同埋無論係其實我會覺得，無論喺外地或者將來如果有機會喺香港可以通過到呢個同性婚姻呢個合法化嘅時候，喺香港結婚嘅話，因為正如我頭先講過，我哋係一個土生土長嘅香港人，我哋希望無論係過往我哋由細到大嘅生活，或者將來好似頭先兩位都講過啦，如果我哋生老病死都可以係將我哋人生重要嘅 moment 喺香港呢個地方裏面係可以實行到嘅話，咁呢個我諗對於每一個香港人嚟講都應該係一件可喜可賀嘅事情啦。咁第二個問題就係話，我覺得一啲實際嘅措施或者 policy， 我哋係希望會係非常樂意見到咯。因為除咗生老病死，呢個係一個好闊嘅一個議題啦。咁我不如舉個例子啦，譬如係話我哋工作上面可能有一啲嘅公司佢會有啲福利俾我哋嘅配偶，咁但係原來所謂嘅配偶只不過係異性戀結咗婚嘅配偶，咁點解我哋同性嘅配偶係唔可以享有嘅咧？咁第二啦就係話，如果我哋有啲咩事情發生嘅時候，咁我哋病咗，咁或者如果真係有是但一方不幸咁樣我哋離世嘅時候，咁其實我哋剩低落嚟嘅，譬如一啲嘅實際嘅，譬如一啲嘅事情要處理嘅時候，可能一啲嘅資產啊，或者係話可能我哋過咗身嘅時候一啲嘅決定權，咁其實會唔會係交翻俾我哋自己最親近嘅伴侶去決定會係比較好咧？咁呢一啲嘅議題其實講咗好多年，咁同埋點解即係好簡單嘅呢一啲嘢，我諗唔好分同性或者異性啦。其實大家將心比己咁去諗啦。如果呢一啲嘢發生喺各位身上嘅時候，你哋好直接就會覺得係話呢一啲嘢，如果我有伴侶，我有另一半嘅時候，我當然會係希望佢幫我處理啦。咁正如我哋都係一樣咁樣嘅諗法咁樣咯嚇。
想問下 Charles，想問下即係中英就話政府冇砌過一框架俾法律去承認同性關係啦，咁你覺得有啲咩情況可以做到咧？同埋可以點樣完善翻而家法律同制度咧？
跟咩褪前一步咧？
呢個好似係一個好深、一個好 deep 或者係一個好宏觀嘅一個議題啦。咁我諗，因為其實我自己本人，我只不過係一個香港嘅小市民。咁對呢個議題嚟講嘅話，我諗喺呢個 moment，我未必會一個好確切嘅答案俾到你，係啦。咁我諗提翻我頭先所講嘅嘢，我諗切身嘅問題，切身我自己諗到嘅就係話，我同我自己將來我嘅伴侶或者我哋雙方嘅家庭，其實有啲乜嘢嘅應該要享有嘅權利，或者有啲咩保障俾我哋咧？我諗係一個權利同埋保障比較緊要啲咯，係啦。
仲有冇咩提問？
唔好意思，啱啱仲有提，即係想問即係佢話依家喺香港都未容許或者認可承認同性婚姻㗎嘛？即係你哋就仲要睇翻政府同埋立法會啦。咁你哋對於呢樣嘢，即係可能喺體制內繼續有政策倡議啊，或者體制外嘅爭取，其實樂唔樂觀咧？尤其是係依家嘅社會環境。
你係想問？
想問教授或者你啊？
頭先就諗住唔係問我，跟住有啲好似啲學生咁樣冇聽書添。體制內同埋體制外，我覺得係坦白講係會有挑戰嘅。咁我覺得即係無可否認嘅係近年嘅社會氣氛係可以話唔同嘅。就住唔同社會議題嘅有啲嘅討論都係少過以前嘅，咁但係我亦都正如頭先所講啦，我又覺得就住即係今日我哋講緊呢個議題係話應唔應該去社會應唔應該去承認同性伴侶嘅權利咧？我又覺得相對上係比起其他議題係話可以係多一啲希望嘅，因為頭先嗰個數字都講緊，其實10年間有22個百分點嘅增長啦。其實另外一個數字爭啲唔記得講添，就係18至34歲嘅我哋嘅受訪者當中咧，係有82%嘅受訪者喺嗰一個年紀嘅係支持同性伴侶嘅權利獲得承認嘅。 咁我覺得其實都好明顯嘅一個世代嘅轉變啦。咁亦都即係呢一個世代轉變其實亦都唔係話太令人詫異嘅，因為其實近年亦都見到越嚟越多媒體嘅報導啊，越嚟越多LGBT 朋友去出櫃啊，咁其實令到個社會嘅支持度亦都會有個改變。咁所以係話即係當然會覺得近年嘅所有嘅社會氣氛有改變，會有一個影響啦。但係我覺得其實喺18至34歲嘅受訪者當中，有82%嘅人係支持，其實都代表住社會上面嘅支持嘅聲音其實亦都冇想像中係咁少咯。
或者我補充翻少少，其實社會上支持同性婚姻嘅聲音係比我哋認知裏邊遠為高。我哋香港婚姻平權協會早前都做咗個質化研究，其實就訪問咗唔同嘅香港人啦，分別有唔同嘅年齡層，咁有叫18、22比較年輕啲嘅，甚至係我哋叫中年啲或者老年啲。其實當中我哋得到嘅回應都非常之正面，大家原來比我哋想象中係更加接受同性婚姻。譬如佢哋話，我哋上網其實睇到好多 YouTuber 拍緊一啲片，講緊佢哋育兒好開心啊，其實佢哋同一般嘅家庭係無異。甚至亦都有啲人會覺得其實都有好多父母係願意支持自己嘅小朋友，即係只要佢哋開心就好。我諗嗰個愛嗰件事其實係 support 到香港嘅社會好多唔同嘅人去接受呢件事，同埋如果當同性婚姻其實都係講緊核心係講緊愛嘅話，咁其實香港社會都冇理由唔接受呢樣嘢。
唔好意思，講開又想講添，係我仲有另一個數字好想講嘅咧，就係我哋喺嗰一啲嘅問卷調查裏邊咧，有問咗嗰啲香港嘅市民咧，係佢自己對於同性戀嘅接受程度啦，同埋佢覺得同性伴侶應唔應該係享有到唔同嘅權利嘅。咁我自己去睇嗰啲數字咧，就發覺有一個幾得意嘅觀察咧，就係當中咧都有幾多嘅市民係話，其實我自己未必接受同性戀㗎，但係我覺得 LGBT 人士或者同性伴侶應該喺社會上面享有權利。當中我覺得其中有一個幾大嘅諗法嘅改變，就可能係話，其實可能至少有當中幾大部分嘅市民就話，其實我哋講緊喺社會上面，我哋每一個人作為香港市民，其實應該得到啲咩權利？係唔係應該可以將一啲所謂個人嘅諗法去擺低，而係講緊話喺公眾領域裏邊，大家作為一個參與呢一個社會嘅人，係唔係都應該得到一啲社會上面嘅保障咧？咁我自己對於嗰一個好似好細嘅觀察，但係呢一個亦都係即係過去嗰10年我一路去睇住唔同嘅喺香港嘅 LGBT 議題嘅發展，我覺得係一個好唔同嘅轉變，由以前係對於 LGBT 群體一個好整體嘅大家有啲咩諗法，到咗而家講緊。其實佢同我都係，佢同你大家都係一個社會上面生活緊嘅人。其實大家會遇到啲咩問題？好似用咗一個幾唔同嘅框架去理解呢一件事。咁呢個對我嚟講係都一個幾我覺得係幾正面嘅一個社會諗法嘅改變。
仲有冇其他問題？
有個好簡單嘅問題想問，即係 Jimmy 知咗嗰個判決，佢有冇乜嘢 feedback 或者感受啊？
Decision and how he reacts to it?
Well, probably he has been told. This is something he would have been entitled to be told. But we are not in contact with Jimmy, and we can't say for sure. I do know that his lawyers know, including those who are not in Hong Kong. But I have no idea if he knows.
仲有冇咩其他問題？
冇。OK。
先講嘅，唔好意思，咁對家即係有啲組織會反對咁，咁係點樣應對呢啲行為？我諗我哋都要實際睇翻啲組織有啲乜嘢反應。我哋都要等翻實際，如果當其實我哋尊重唔同嘅聲音，我亦都理解香港社會係應當有唔同嘅聲音，而我哋信仰嘅價值其實都係尊重、包容唔同嘅聲音。咁至於你頭先講到呢啲反對聲音，我哋點樣應對嘅時候，或者我哋都稍後等下睇下對方會有啲咩講嘅時候，我哋先再做回應。你係咪仲有咩問題啊？
升到嘅，咁因為今次嘅判決咧都話有其他嘅替代方法去承認呢個同性嘅關係啦，都想問下教授會唔會即係其他國家有冇一啲類似嘅替代方法可以俾去承認呢個關係嘅俾香港參考？
First and see whether like in terms of the alternative forms to civil partnership what forms does it better? 咁 即係當然其中一個所謂替代嘅方法就係即係呢個 civil partnership 或者 civil union， 即係民事結合呢一個方法啦。咁呢一個其實個討論喺好多唔同嘅地方裏邊都曾經去進行嘅。即係如果冇呢個婚姻嘅時間，呢個民事結合嘅形式係點樣咧？咁當中我覺得即係從一個學術嘅角度去分析，就有兩個層面嘅。第一個就係法律嘅層面，又或者意義上面嘅層面。咁當中都有好多爭議嘅。咁法律嘅層面就係喺啲國家裏邊啦，譬如喺英國啦，咁佢哋係有呢個民事結合嗰陣咧，好強調喺個法律裏邊係有寫明係話雖然呢個係民事結合而唔係同性婚姻啦，但係唔可以係將呢兩樣嘢有差別對待嘅。咁所以呢個亦即係首先呢個層面就係喺法律上面如果有呢個民事結合嗰陣，會唔會法律上面有意義唔同啦？咁但係另外一個咧就係都會有好多嘅爭議，喺好多唔同嘅地方裏邊都有曾經有出現過嘅，就係無論 LGBT 社群啦，又或者社會上面對呢一個替代框架民事結合嘅一個諗法上面啊。咁有一啲社會人士就會可能覺得有民事結合幾好啊，因為好似係即係喺個討論裏邊，始終社會上面對於婚姻都會覺得有好多無論宗教啊或者歷史上面嘅諗法。咁好似用民事結合咧，就可能會係有一啲社會上面嘅人士會有一啲嗰個反對意見啊，又或者個諗法相對上冇咁強嘅。咁但係亦都有一啲 LGBT 社群人士裏邊我哋見得到世界各地唔同，有時又會有個討論係話咁如果講緊平權嘅時間，咁點解要有一個另外嘅替代框架咧？咁所以其實當呢啲替代框架去出現嗰陣，好多時就會出現咗呢啲類型嘅一啲爭議。咁我覺得即係其實係都好正常嘅，喺每一個國家每一個地方裏邊嘅法律嘅發展裏邊當中遇到呢一啲問題，都係好可以去理解同埋會預見得到嘅。So see if you answer.
There's a very good legal reason not to have two different tiers. The reason is like this. The government may come forward with an institution, whether they call it civil union or civil partnership, in an effort to offer something which is less than marriage. The trouble is, if they do that, then it may be that a heterosexual couple comes forward and says, why can a homosexual couple get something less than marriage, but I cannot get something less than marriage? In that case, the court will probably say, you should also be able to get this civil partnership. Now, the reason why this is a reason why there should be the same as, it should be the same as marriage is because the government has all along said that they want to support marriage. They want to encourage more people to enter into marriages. But if they provide a second tier, they may actually dissuade people from getting married. So we strongly feel that it is in everyone's interest, the whole of Hong Kong society, for the civil partnership or civil union for same-sex couples to be in substance the same as marriage. Of course, the government may choose not to do that, but we will have to wait and see.
In fact, there was actually a court case in the
Yes.
UK that
Yes.
a different sex couple asked why I'm
That's
not
right.
entitled
Yeah,
to civil partnership.
as Professor says, it's quite true that there have already been cases litigating whether or not a same-sex couple should, opposite-sex couple should also be able to access the same level as civil union or civil partnership. And the courts in the UK have already accepted it would be discriminatory to offer it to one group of people but not the other. Which is why, again, we think that these things should be the same in substance.
Can I have one more question? Does the judgment means the government is obliged to have something, to have a scheme in substitute same-sex marriage rights? And also, do you have anything in mind that might need legal protection for same-sex couples? Because you mentioned a lot of previous cases. Are there any areas are left unchallenged or unchanged that might be changed in the future?
So your first question was
Was the government obliged to
yes,
make
the
changes?
government's obligation and then whether there are any leftover areas.
Yes.
I think for the public, they can understand it like this. Once the Court of Final Appeal gives the declaration, which they will give in 2 years' time, then the government have a positive obligation always to comply with the law. And in 2 years' time, they will tell the government that they are obliged to provide an alternative status. So in 2 years' time, the government will be obliged to provide an alternative status. Why I can say that is because Article 4 of the Hong Kong Basic Law requires the government proactively to protect and safeguard the rights of Hong Kong people. And if the Court of Final Appeal has said that those rights require this status for same-sex couples, then yes, the government must provide that status. Your second question is, are there any leftover areas left to be challenged? There are many, many, many areas. I mentioned earlier the EOC report that was issued several years ago, listing out the areas. I should emphasize, even that report is not a complete report. There are existing cases, some judgments which will come out very soon, I think in the next few weeks, that deal with other areas, especially family and children rights. There are also 2 cases in front of the Court of Appeal dealing, as you know, with housing, public housing cases. There are other cases dealing with intestacy, succession, inheritance from family members. There are many other areas, and an area which we were discussing earlier is discrimination on the basis of family status. So the Court of Final Appeal is saying that same-sex couples should have a kind of family status. There is a family status discrimination ordinance. There are already couples who are facing discrimination because they are in relationships like this. It will become against the law for someone to discriminate against them in the near future. Of course, we don't want any of this to be subject to litigation. We prefer for the government to proactively try to take steps to correct the law.
Sorry, I keep on wanting to say things. Obviously, that's a professorial. I just want to add that also I want to add another perspective, because so far the discussion that we've been talking about is the impact on the same-sex couples themselves, which is obviously very important. But I also want to bring in the perspective that this judgment is also very important for Hong Kong society as a whole, for both businesses that want to bring talent to Hong Kong, as well as how Hong Kong positions itself as an inclusive society. Because I remember back in 2017 when the QT and SS case came out, then I've done a lot of interviews both before and QT and SS and after QT and SS, that a lot of same-sex couples, after the decision, they really tell me that when they get a job offer to come to Hong Kong, a very big thing is that they go online and see how Hong Kong is in terms of its recognition of LGBT plus rights. And I would imagine that this time with such an even more landmark decision, this is going to also mean a lot for businesses, a lot for Hong Kong in terms of attracting its talents. 咁我好想講嘅咧就係，雖然咧其實呢一個判決咧，我哋好自然會將佢擺咗喺同性伴侶身上面佢哋嘅福祉啦。但係其實對於香港社會整體嚟講咧，其實當有一個咁重要判決咧，其實對於無論商業世界啦，又或者香港整體嘅社會點樣喺全球裏邊去講話，其實自己嘅定位係點，都係一個好重要嘅指標嚟嘅。因為其實咧，全球其實而家已經有越嚟越多嘅國家係有去承認同性伴侶嘅權利啦。你可以想像，當一個商業嘅公司，當佢係可能要喺世界各地去請唔同嘅人才嚟香港嗰陣，真係好可能有一對同性伴侶會話，其實我喺當地已經有我嘅權利㗎，我嚟到香港唔會去放棄自己嘅權利。其實啱啱近嚟，我先至喺大學裏邊嘅另一個 department 聽到就係有一個咁嘅 case 出現。呢一啲嘅情況以前係可能覺得係一啲好理論化嘅情況嚟嘅，但係其實而家呢一啲嘅情況越嚟越實際。咁所以我覺得其實我哋除咗睇呢一個判決係話對於同性伴侶佢哋自己本身嘅福祉嚟講，其實無論講緊香港嘅商業運作啦，香港係點樣去同其他唔同嘅地區去競爭啦，喺全球裏邊嘅定位啦，呢一啲其實都係一個好重要嘅呢一個判決帶嚟嘅一啲影響。
I think I would like Hong Kong people to understand the importance of this judgment is not only about what will happen in 2 years. Actually, the Court of Final Appeal talks a lot about different arguments that were raised by the government. And one very important feature of this judgment is talking about the right of Hong Kong people, all Hong Kong people, to protection of their privacy. The court has defined privacy in a much broader way than the government were defining it, and have also defined the government's obligations to protect everyone's privacy in a more proactive way. Hong Kong people may have some difficulty to understand what impact this will make, but I can tell you it has a broad, wide-ranging, and very deep impact on our lives. All of us can imagine some private sphere, something that defines us, something about how we treat or define ourselves, protecting our own dignity and who we are. The Court of Final Appeal has stated very clearly two things. One, that all of that is protected by the law, and two, that the Hong Kong government has a positive obligation to protect all of our privacy.
如果冇嘅話，需唔需要再影多一張合照？
唔使啦，OK。
可能麻煩影多張合照啫。
Being next to a sun shows how short.
It's a good combination.
好，中間再嚟啊，唔該，中間後邊再嚟啊。好望一望呢度啊，呢邊。呢度。
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to cramp space, so what can be provided?
Okay. 想問係咪全部人都已經有咗個 media statement？ 如果仲有冇人冇嘅？如果稍後仲有啲乜嘢提問嘅，歡迎聯絡 media statement 上面嘅電話號碼或者 email， 咁我哋會回覆翻大家嘅謝謝
可唔可以問 Travis 姓名？
係咁多。係啊，同埋都知道係因為啫嘛，等陣時咦，我哋上鏡喎，上唔上鏡啊？其實上唔到嘅，大概啫嘛。我嘅上鏡，我係上嘅同上唔到係有分別。
咪即係呢對
係啊，
呢一個
就係要影。
即係我咧香港就真係我大啲嘅，
咁啦，影埋你啦，執翻兩部機先啦。